For those who live in Navy Yard, did you know you can order Walters online for pickup? Visit waltersdc.com, click on menus, and then push the order online button so it's ready when you get there to take back home with you.
The 1-2. Breaking ball grounded past the mound, slowly hit it to the side of the mound. Abrams fields moving in, double clutches. The throw to first is not in time. A run will score. It's 2-0 Pirates. It took Abrams too long to get rid of it. He took the extra step. Gonzalez hustles down the line. It's an infield single. 3 balls, 2 strikes. Santana the set. Checks on Abrams at second. He fires home. Swinging a fly ball right field deep. Going back Reynolds to the warning track. He's there. He makes the catch a step from the wall. And the game is over. And the Nationals are shut out for the first time this season as the Pirates win it 2-0.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark is at PNC Park in Pittsburgh, where the Nats on Wednesday evening got shut out, a 2-0 loss at the Pittsburgh Pirates in Game 3 of a 4-game series. The Nats in MLB's 2026 regular season fell to 8-10. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Window Nation's The More You Buy, The More You Save sale. Visit windownation.com to book a consultation. So Wednesday was Jackie Robinson Day in MLB, the annual day on which MLB honors the great Jackie Robinson for breaking MLB's color barrier. Wednesday was the 79th anniversary of the regular season MLB debut for Robinson with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Jackie Robinson Day includes all kinds of tributes to Robinson, including all on-field personnel in MLB wearing Jackie Robinson's number 42 in Dodger blue, regardless of each team's primary color. And the Nats on this Jackie Robinson Day played a game straight out of the time in which Jackie Robinson played, a game that took just 2 hours and 13 minutes. But unfortunately, a big part of that was the Nats doing very little offensively. Just 2 runs for the Nats in this game, Mark. Just the 5th time in 18 games that the Nats did not score at least 5 runs.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway, Al, is that it was really surprising that this happened. A year ago when they got shut out, which happened way too regularly, you kind of expected it. You kind of could see it coming. In this case, it really comes as a shock. They entered the day leading the majors with an average of 5.82 runs scored per game, ahead of the Dodgers. I mean, think about that, how dramatic that is. Now, is it going to stay that way all year? Who knows? But they really have established themselves as a good quality, productive lineup. And so when you have a game in which it just didn't happen for them at all, it really feels out of the norm. And I think in a sort of a strange way, they might be able to look at that in a positive light and say, okay, just a bad night, really good pitching by the Pirates. We don't need to worry too much about this. We're going to be just fine. You know, it's going to happen every once in a while to everybody. Don't get too caught up in the fact that we just got shut out because this is the first time we've had a game anything like that so far this year.
Yeah, now it is worth noting, offense around MLB has been up lately. There have been a number of big offensive performances. Nobody's quite sure what to make of that. But it is remarkable with the Nats offensively. And, you know, you can look at all the stats you want. If you just go by runs, the fact that the Nats in 13 of the 18 games have scored at least 5 runs, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that is good in any offensive environment. So definitely give the Nats credit for that. You know, there was a bit of unluckiness in this game. The Nats per StatCast made 5 outs, each with an exit velocity of at least 99.2 miles per hour. But the bottom line offensive production was not there. No runs, just 3 hits, which were 2 doubles and a single, just 2 walks, 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position. The Pirates went with an opener in Mason Montgomery. He tossed a scoreless top of the first. And then the Pirates starting pitcher, Carmen Majinski, acting as the bulk pitcher. He tossed 6 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts. We did, though, have another good game for C.J. Abrams. Here's how you know how hot C.J. Abrams is. In a game in which the Nats got shut out, he got on base 4 times. This guy right now just is unconscious. He is the Nats starting shortstop and number 5 batter, 1 for 1 with a double, a walk, and 2 hit by pitches. Abrams OPS now at 1,175. But the Nats had just 2 other hits. Curtis Mead, he is the Nats starting first baseman and number 2 batter, 1 for 4 with a double. And Jorbit Bibas, he is the Nats starting second baseman and number 7 batter, 1 for 3 with a single. And there just was not that much to digest here if you're a Nats fan in terms of what the team did offensively.
No, there wasn't. And really, the credit they were giving in the clubhouse afterwards was entirely to the Pirates and specifically to Carmen Majinski. And what he did was he managed to both get ahead of the hitters really quickly, 0-1, 0-2, while not putting the ball over the heart of the plate. Everything was on the edges. So you're behind in the count and not really getting anything to hit in the first place. And that's a tough thing to do when you want to be aggressive, when you're, not doing much offensively, but you start swinging at pitches that are on the edges. They're not really good pitches to hit. But if you sit back and take him, he's actually hitting the corner, so you fall behind anyways. There was just no good answer for them in this game against him. So I think a lot of the credit goes to them. The Pirates have a really good pitching staff. It's not just Paul Skeens. It goes, throughout the rotation and right down to their bullpen as well. Their issue all along was going to be, can they hit enough to support that pitching staff? And so far they have done that. So, we'll see how that all plays out. As far as Abrams goes, now leading the majors in on-base percentage. I think it's 458 that he's up to. And that's fantastic, of course. And I'll be curious to see now, he's been batting mostly 5th or 6th in Blake Butera's lineup. And they have their reasons for that, as they do with all this stuff. I will be curious if he creeps up there at all. We know traditionally he was thought of as a leadoff hitter, but he was not doing what he's doing now in terms of drawing the walks and getting on base at such a high clip. And James Wood clearly is thriving right now as the leadoff man. Do you move Abrams up there playing the hot hand, or do you stick with the numbers and the projections that they have when they're putting together their lineups every day that is apparently saying to them they're a more productive lineup with Abrams batting somewhere more in the middle of it, maybe more opportunities to drive in runs, whatever that may be. I'll be curious to see how this plays out. I don't know if they're just going to make a rash decision off this one game and bump him up, but there's going to be a pretty good argument here soon if he keeps this going to say, don't you want this guy at the plate more than he is right now as a number 5 or 6 hitter? Maybe it's 3rd, maybe it's 4th. Maybe they even go all the way and make him the leadoff guy and put Wood behind him. I will be very interested to see how they react to his performance.
Well, Blake Butera has said the idea with a lineup is to get your best batters the most plate appearances possible. And the Nats' 2 best batters clearly are James Wood and C.J. Abrams. So those guys, 1, 2 in some order, would seem to make the most sense. We don't know exactly what the team with the new process is thinking with having Abrams bat consistently in the number 5 spot, number 6 spot, like you said. The team clearly has its reasons for doing that. But at some point, if you have an OPS approaching 1,200, maybe it's time to bat in a number 1 spot or in a number 2 spot. The slash line for Abrams is absurd. Batting average 367, on base percentage 458, slugging percentage 717. James Wood still has very good numbers overall, but Abrams' numbers actually blow away Wood's numbers. Like if you just do the compare and contrast, Abrams right now is just producing at a level that we have not seen. And, we have seen him get hot like this. I don't know, maybe to this extent, but like the last few seasons when he has been good, he hasn't just been good. He has been great. The problem has been him cooling off, and him having one good month, one bad month, one good month, one bad month. And so I think that's going to be as interesting as anything. In May, how is C.J. Abrams doing? His April almost certainly is going to end up being a terrific month. What is his May going to end up being? Because if his May is good, then I think you can really start to get excited of, okay, maybe this guy is becoming a more consistent hitter.
And I think the difference so far and the real thing to watch, it's not just going to be the hits, the extra base hits and all that. It's the on-base percentage. It's the walks. He is drawing more walks. He's being more patient. Even at his best, the last 2 years when he was really good in the first half, I don't think he was drawing this many walks. I don't think he was showing the kind of plate discipline that he is. He was hitting the ball really hard and making great contact, but he was not getting on base in other ways. And so I think that could be the tell that says whether he has really turned a corner here and become a true force offensively, or whether he's just off to a really hot start. And as far as him versus Wood, I think what that is about is that CJ pretty much from day one was hot, and James Wood needed about a week to get going. And once he did, was fantastic. But remember, 1 week into the season, we were worried about James Wood, what was going on with him. He clearly figured it out, and he's been phenomenal since then. But that 1 week is probably the difference right now between why Abrams' numbers are so beyond and so good versus Woods, who are just merely very good.
I also wonder about this with Abrams. So we know about the trade talk this past offseason. Him doing so well right now, is that increasing the likelihood of Paul Taboni trading Abrams during the season? Is this perhaps increasing the likelihood of Taboni signing Abrams to a contract extension? Remember, Abrams is not a Scott Boras guy, so he has always been viewed as someone who potentially, maybe possibly could be signed to a contract extension. But you think about those two extremes, right? Being traded or being extended. Abrams doing so well right now. Which extreme is having its likelihood increased by what Abrams is doing right now?
I think it is a fascinating question, and it's a good dilemma for them to have. They would love to get to that point come July where they have to make that decision. Again, they're not required to do anything. They can, he's got 2 more years of control after this, so they don't have to move him if they don't want. They don't even have to sign him to an extension if they don't want. I think the things that they're going to have to decide internally are, can he sustain it for the full 6 months? Again, yeah, he's playing at a better pace right now than he has in the past, but we know he's been an all-star caliber player for 3 months at a time and just has not been able to continue it beyond that. So do they think that there's a difference here that he can continue it for that long? And really beyond that, do they view him as a starting shortstop for them for several years to come? The organization may be awash in top young prospects who can play shortstop, but they're several years away. Eli Willett's, at the top of that list. So it's Abrams' job if they want to proceed that way. So do you think he can be your shortstop for the next several years or even beyond? If not, do you think he is worth investing in if he's going to have to play another position at some point? Do you believe ultimately he's got all the talent in the world, but it's not worth it if you don't truly believe in him from a defensive standpoint, or if you're just not confident that he's going to be able to sustain this performance? I think it's a fascinating dilemma with no necessarily right answer to the question. I'm sure come July, if he keeps this up, Paul Taboni is going to have plenty of offers for him. And then he's got to decide, are the offers so good that he can't afford to pass them up? Or does he think there's enough there to suggest that Abrams could actually be a part of this plan when this team's ready to win? And again, we don't know what their timeline is for the team being ready to win, but our sense, based on everything they've done to this point, is that they're looking further down the road and not in the next year or two.
And there are so many questions beyond the principal question I just put forth. If Paul Taboni wanted to extend C.J. Abrams, would he be allowed to extend Abrams by ownership? There's also this: if you are looking to trade Abrams and you fear the streakiness, should you not be trying to trade him now or sometime soon and trade him before the inevitable slump comes? So a lot of ways this could go, a lot of ways that the Nats head of baseball operations, the president of baseball ops, Paul Taboni, could be thinking right now. Al Galdi here to tell you about Window Nation's The More You Buy, The More You Save sale. But before that, the Window Nation look into the future.
Dylan Cruz hits against him now. The pitch, fastball high, fly ball into right, carrying well. Piñango back to the warning track. He's at the fence. He jumps up, and it's out of here. Dylan Cruz goes the other way to right, and Cruz starts the scoring today with an opposite field home run. 1-0 Rochester.
Well, happy spring. Window Nation is ready for spring, and Window Nation wants Nats Chat podcast listeners to know that there's no better time to upgrade your home with great Window Nation windows than right now, as Window Nation is offering to Nats Chat podcast listeners the More You Buy, The More You Save sale. Save up to 50%. Get your windows with 0% interest for 5 years. During uncertain times, one of the best investments that you can make is investing in your home. So visit windownation.com now to book a consultation and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you. That's windownation.com and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
Here's the set and the 0-2 to the plate. Swing a line drive right field. That's going to be down for a base hit. Wood plays on it a couple of hops. Heading home is Reynolds. The throw to the plate is not in time. He scores standing up, and over to third is Ryan O'Hearn. It's an RBI single the other way for Marcell Ozuna. That's the Pirates 1 and the Nationals 0.
The biggest positive for the Nats in this 2-0 loss at the Pirates on Wednesday evening was the Nats pitching. It is not often we have said that the Nats' biggest positive in a game this season has been the pitching, but the pitching overall in this game was good. And Jake Irvin, 2 runs in 5 innings, 5 strikeouts. He gave up 4 hits, all of which were singles. He issued 3 walks and a hit by pitch. He threw 85 pitches, 54 strikes, 31 balls. Irvin in the bottom of the first allowed 2 runs despite generating swinging strikeouts of the Pirates' numbers 1 and 2 batters, O'Neill Cruz and Brandon Lau. But Irvin in that Pirates 2-run first allowed 5 consecutive Pirates batters to reach base, gave up 3 2-out singles, issued a 2-out walk and a 2-out hit by pitch. But Irvin concluded his outing by retiring 13 of the final 16 batters he faced. And if this sounds familiar, it should. This was similar to how Irvin's last outing went. Irvin in the Nats 7-3 win at the Milwaukee Brewers this past Friday night, 3 runs in 5 innings. He in the bottom of the first allowed 3 runs, but then retired 13 of the final 16 batters he faced. Jake Irvin right now is giving us a lot of what he gave us last season, which is the first innings are really bad, but the rest of the game actually isn't that bad. As bad as Irvin was last season, he beyond first innings actually wasn't that bad. You look at Irvin here over his 4 starts this regular season, 13 earned runs, 7 of them have been first inning runs. Irvin last regular season, 114 earned runs, 36 of them were first inning runs. We're kind of right back to where we were last year with Jake Irvin.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, as you just outlined there. I will say, I think this one was better than the Milwaukee one. In that game, it's 2 walks and then a 3-run homer that it gives up before he settled in. But he also wound up walking 5 over those 5 innings, and his pitch count was sky high. It was up to 100 after 5 innings. In this case, yeah, 3 walks and a hit batter, that's not ideal. But the hits he gave up in the first inning were pretty weak hits. One of them is a grounder to short that Abrams got caught in between deciding whether to get the out at second or to go to first. And by the time he decided to go to first, it was too late and the throw was late. Take that out. That's one of the runs scoring. You had an opposite field RBI single by Marcell Ozuna. So not a lot of hard contact there. And I think Irvin was able to look at that and say, don't change too much. Don't worry about the results from the first inning. The process was good. He struck out those first 2 batters, like you mentioned, O'Neill Cruz and Brandon Lau. He was pumping 94, 95 with his fastball to get those guys out. So that, I thought, was a very good sign. I think there were way more positives in this one than negatives. And the first inning, I don't really fully attribute it to Irvin. The walk is probably the biggest mistake he made to extend the inning there. He could have gone more than 5. He only threw 85 pitches. You could have sent him back out there for the 6th, but I think Blake Butera probably said, hey, he salvaged this one. He got us through 5. We're in this game. Let's get him out of there on a high note. So I think if you're Jake Irvin, you're taking way more positives out of this one. The negatives, you'd love to solve the first inning problem. Maybe he's just going to be a guy who struggles with it. He's certainly not alone in baseball, but focus on how you got the weak contact. Try to limit the walks. Obviously his problem has been home runs. That was not an issue in this game. And he may come out of this one actually feeling pretty good about himself.
It just was so funny that first inning because he begins it with the 2 great strikeouts of Cruz and Lau. And you're like, okay, this will be a good first inning for Jake Irvin, but it ended up not being such a good first inning for him. A bright spot, too, with the pitching in this game was that the Nats used just one reliever, Brad Lord. That was it. And he was really good. 3 scoreless innings, 39 pitches, 28 strikes versus 11 balls. And, you celebrate this in multiple ways, right? A, Lord looked good, but B, that Blake Butera only needed to use one reliever. I mean, how needed was that? I mean, here you have Butera having used his relievers a ton. 2 of them went on the 15-day injured list on Monday. Nats in the midst of 17 consecutive days with no scheduled off days. And Brad Lord coming through on Wednesday evening to the tune of 3 shutout innings. So good to see that.
It's a small thing, and yet it's actually a huge thing, because now everybody else is available for you on Thursday in the series finale. You have Foster Griffin, who has been pretty good as a workhorse for you. But if you have to pull him, you should have everybody else that you can turn to. These guys have been pitching a lot, not just on this road trip, but throughout the season to date. That's one of those things where you're going to look back and say 3 scoreless innings and a loss. What's the big deal? That has a domino effect on the day after and maybe the day after that. That's where Brad Lord comes in really valuable for you to have somebody to do that, to get through a game, whether you won or you lost, to get through a game using only 2 pitchers. In today's baseball world, that's a huge positive for a team.
Yeah, Brad Lord is tied for number 2 on the Nats in innings pitched, 15 2/3. Jake Irvin is number 1 at 19. Lord, Cade Cavalli, and Miles Michaelis are tied for number 2 at 15 and 2/3. And, we mentioned the guy who was the Pirates bulk pitcher in this game, Majinski. So he last season was a reliever, and he this season is being utilized as a starter, although in this game he technically wasn't a starter, but he was a bulk guy. And, you think about Brad Lord, and we've talked about what his role this season might end up being, but, you never know, like long term, what we could be looking at. And if Brad Lord excels this season in whatever role he's asked to fulfill, maybe next season he earns his way into the Nats rotation. Like, I still feel like there's a lot that's unwritten with Brad Lord, and he overall has done a good job. And when you do a good job as a pitcher, and the organization is lacking in starting pitching depth, like there probably is at least a decent chance you can find your way into the rotation. And so I still do wonder about that with Brad Lord, if we might see him be in the Nats rotation, if not this season, then maybe next season.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And what they're going to have to decide is, let's say he keeps doing this and he pitches 2-3 innings at a time out of the bullpen and is effective. That's a valuable thing to have on a team, because now you can pitch maybe once every 3 or 4 days instead of only once every 5 days. And as you said, he's still compiling innings that he actually ranks there among the starters, essentially, in workload. That maybe says a lot about the lack of innings from their starters. But, there's an argument that is maybe more valuable to have him in that role. By the same token, if you think he's good enough, why not consider giving him a start or two and seeing if that could work? It seems like here in Pittsburgh, they've kind of had to take that approach with Majinski. And there's kind of always been this question of, is he a starter? Is he a reliever? As we said, they have a really good deep pitching staff. They're giving him this opportunity to kind of be their fifth starter / the bulk guy. Whatever it is, it's working. And, maybe, and I think especially with the way we have the new front office here and the new coaching staff, I think we just have to start thinking of pitching in different terms than we have traditionally. And you love to think of your starters as the most important and the best pitchers, but you can be really good on your team and really valuable and not be a traditional starter. And maybe he's somebody who does the bulk relief thing, and maybe he starts sometimes depending on the matchups, and maybe he has an opener for him sometimes. I don't know, but I'll just say that if Brad Lord continues to pitch the way he has, he's going to have a home here for a long time and become a valuable member of this pitching staff, whatever that role ends up being.
So the Tampa Bay Rays pioneered the opener strategy, but the Milwaukee Brewers, like 6, 7, 8 years ago, started referring to pitchers as outgetters. And there was this feeling that maybe the whole pitching paradigm was collapsing and that we were going to get away from labeling pitchers as starters and relievers and just view them as outgetters. Now, that hasn't quite happened. There still, for the most part, is this model of you have your starters and you have your relievers. But yeah, it is something I definitely have wondered about. Like, are we going to get to a point at some point to where we stop with the labels of starter and reliever and just everyone is a pitcher and you view your pitching staff as just a bunch of guys who get outs? And, Brad Lord perhaps would fit right into something like that.
I think the key part to that whole dilemma is, in the short term, I think that can work, especially when you get into the postseason or even down the stretch of a pennant race. But it's hard to do that for 162 and keep everybody in one piece, unless you've got so much pitching depth that you can call guys up from AAA and send them back down. It's hard to ask your relievers to take on that kind of load if you aren't using starters for the traditional 5 to 6 innings. So if you have enough guys who have the ability to be workhorses, I think most teams are still going to look at that as important over a full 6-month season. Once you get down to the stretch run, and certainly when you get to the playoffs, I think it's appropriate to look at it in different terms. And what's the best way to get to 27 outs? Who cares what the role is, who's pitching when, how much they pitch? I think that really works at that time. But for the full 162, I think it's a little harder to make that all work.
Here comes Sasaki's offering. And a slow roller hits the first base bag and deflects over the shoulder of Freeman out into right field. Picked up by the second baseman Freeland. He'll throw it into second base as Abrams will come in to score. What a break for Keibert Ruiz and the Nationals, who lead it 3-1. That was going to be the third out of the inning, but it hit the first base bag and like a skee ball in an arcade, bounded right over the shoulder of Freddie Freeman. There was nothing he could do but watch.
All right. I did want to bring up catcher Keibert Ruiz. So first of all, he is struggling offensively. And we haven't talked about this much because at this point, I don't know how much is left to say about his struggles offensively, but this is shaping into a third consecutive wretched offensive season for Keibert Ruiz. He on Wednesday evening as an starting catcher and number 8 batter went 0 for 2. His OPS now is at 533. That includes an on-base percentage of 200. Not his batting average is 200. His on-base percentage is 200. But there's also this, and Mark noted this on X. Keibert Ruiz on Wednesday evening fell to a woeful 1 for 6 on ABS challenges when playing catcher here in this regular season. 1 for 6. And of course, you think about that as being especially harmful in a few ways, right? Number one, a team goes into a game with 2 challenges. But number 2, he is the catcher. He is receiving the pitches, and yet he is 1 for 6 on ABS challenges. That is stunning. Now, I get it. 6 isn't exactly the largest sample size you'll ever see. But, you combine that with the bad offense, and it has been a rough go for Keibert Ruiz so far.
It is, and it looks very similar to what we had seen in the past. Very weak contact, reaching for pitches that are out of the strike zone, not showing the kind of plate discipline that you would hope you would see. He had a big hit the other day in Milwaukee that came through for them in a big spot, and that was important. But they've been few and far between. Behind the plate, the framing has been better if you look at the metrics early on. But as you noted, and I pointed out in this game, the ABS challenges have been pretty awful from him. The throwing, I don't think, has been significantly better in throwing out runners. It just kind of looks a lot like what we've seen before. And remember, there was always that question of, well, maybe he'd be better if he just didn't play as much because maybe Davey Martinez was wearing him down, catching him so much. He and Drew Millis, I believe, have literally alternated every game so far, as best as I can remember. So it's not a workload issue. It's not that. Now, Millis has not done a whole lot himself either. Offensively hasn't been good. And defensively, for a guy who's supposed to have a pretty good reputation there, has not looked great either, I think, behind the plate. Altogether, they're just not getting what you need from a production standpoint from the catching position. Now, the problem is this. Harry Ford, who we believe is the future, since they went and traded for him over the winter, is not off to a good start in Rochester either. I'm looking at a 167 batting average, 305 on base, so he's getting on base a little better, but 229 slugging percentage. So he's not hitting the ball with any real authority. Riley Adams is doing well at AAA as the other catcher there. Now remember, he's off the 40-man roster. They would have to purchase his contract to bring him back. You could do that. You can make a 40-man move. I think we've all seen Riley Adams over the years to know that he isn't any kind of long-term solution. Maybe you could catch him while he's hot and he makes a little bit of a difference, but I'm not really sure what the answer is here. I just know they're not going to rush Harry Ford up here before they believe he's ready. I think they are more likely to weather the storm with Ruiz and Millis and make that move with Ford once they are absolutely sure that he's good to go to be the guy up here. But it's kind of hard to watch right now. And it with each passing day, it does kind of make you wonder whether Keibert Ruiz really does have a future here or not, in spite of his contract and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about weathering the storm. I don't know that this storm is ending. I think the storm may be just the new normal here, and this is how it is. At some point with Keibert Ruiz, it's like you're out of the development phase and you are in the salvage phase. And now it's almost like you're in the phase of what's the point anymore? Just to be totally fair, he's fully recovered from the concussion problems last season. We are not to view the struggles right now as being in any way a function of the concussion issues of last year.
By all accounts, he's fine. He has not reported any symptoms. I don't think anything that we're seeing from him suggests that there are still symptoms for that. So no, I don't think it's that. I think it's purely a performance thing. And if he had been tearing the cover off the ball before that all happened last summer, maybe he'd be a little concerned. But what we're seeing is pretty much who he was before that all came up. It still feels like the same approach, the same kind of contact from him at the plate. It's just not happening.
And with the 1 for 6 on ABS challenges, do you think Blake Butera or maybe even Paul Taboni would ever tell Keibert Ruiz, stop it, stop with the challenges? This is not working. Leave the challenges to the pitcher, but this just is not your thing. So please stop doing that.
Maybe. I think their bigger concern would be don't use them in spots where it's not high leverage enough. Don't do it with nobody on base early in the game. If it's a big spot and you think maybe there's a chance they got it wrong, okay, go for it, especially if you're getting later in the game. I mean, he's only challenged 6 times, so it's not like it's a ton of them. 6 out of the, 9 games that he's played so far. So less than once per game that he's challenging. But boy, you would like to think everything that we've heard about ABS is that the catchers are the best at it. Catchers are best, hitters are second best, and pitchers are the worst. Among the catchers, Ruiz is not ranking very well so far. It doesn't speak very highly of his ability to read pitches. And I know it's a different perspective when he's batting, but here's a guy who does swing at a lot of pitches off the plate too. So not a great command of the strike zone right now, whether he's behind the plate or at the plate.
This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Window Nation's The More You Buy, The More You Save sale. Visit windownation.com to book a consultation. We have an afternoon game on Thursday, Game 4 for the Nats at the Pirates, 12:35. Foster Griffin will be the Nats starting pitcher. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like for us to deliver a shout out to someone who you care about. Contact Tim Shovers, the man who runs this podcast. Again, that email address, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Robinson dashes to the plate. It's close, and umpire Summers calls him safe on the daring maneuver. But Yogi Berra doesn't think so. And the fans will never forget the sight of Jackie Robinson preparing for the plate on his daring steal.